Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Kitchen Design Experts. This is the channel that tells you everything you need to know about kitchens, about bedrooms and about home offices. Now then, today, how do you design a small kitchen? Okay, obviously we do hundreds of kitchens that have been opened up and are big living family rooms. It's the modern thing these days, but obviously we also get quite a lot of kitchens that in comparison can be quite tiny. And just how do you make the best of these kitchens? Sometimes you've got to really come up with some clever design ideas, and those are the tips I'm going to be giving you today to make a small kitchen workable, but at the same time actually look bigger so that you don't feel hemmed in. We're actually going to use a kitchen that I fit about 3 months ago, which was quite a small kitchen, and I'm going to take you through the design process to give you some insider knowledge as to how to go about designing your small kitchen. Okay, well let's dive straight in with the plan of the actual room that we're talking about. Here you can see the plan version of it on your screen. If you look at the room itself, there's a door up at the top left hand side here. It's actually a square opening in reality, that one. Window on the similar wall at the top there. And you can see that the overall length of the room is 3.3 metres, just over. But you can also see that the width of the room is barely over 2 metres. And that is actually the problem that you've got with a kitchen like this. Because into this kitchen, what the client wanted was to try and fit a washer dryer, a double built-in oven in a tall housing, a 45 centimetre wide dishwasher, obviously a hob and a sink, and a 50-50 fridge freezer. Now you've got to bear in mind that all those appliances that I've just mentioned require a worktop depth of at least 600 millimetres, 60 centimetres. And as well as having the appliances in this kitchen, yes, obviously she's going to need storage space and valuable worktop space. And when you go to small kitchens such as this, the design can be problematical. One of the saving graces for this particular room is there's only one entry door. We'd have had a much more difficult job if there'd been another door in this room. Okay, let's look at what I call an obvious design. Here we have a typical U-shaped kitchen. Now I have to say, if you've seen our previous videos, it does conform to design principles. You've got your two tall housings, your fridge freezer and your double oven, down on this bottom wall at the end of the run where they should be together. You've got your hob adjacent to the oven, but then to the left of the hob, running all the way around to the sink on the top wall, plenty worktop space, so you've got your preparation space. Your dishwasher is handy for your sink, and all your wall cupboards run all the way around, and you've got plenty of cupboard space. So yes, it conforms to design principles. So what's wrong with it? How can it be improved? Well, you have to look at what's wrong to start with to know how to improve something. And basically, there's two things wrong with this kitchen. One is how it works, and that is simply because it's very much a one-person kitchen. If the oven doors drop down, or the drawers are pulled out, or in fact if any cupboard at all is open, nobody can walk past. It's so cramped in there that really it's a very difficult kitchen to use. The other thing, of course, is how it looks. And quite frankly, you'd walk into this kitchen and it would feel claustrophobic. It would feel cramped. The actual two long runs of the sink and the hob have accentuated the narrowness of the kitchen. It looks like a runway. So really, we've got to do something about both those things. We've got to make it a more functional kitchen, and we've got to make it feel more spacious. So exactly how do we go about that? Okay, this is actually the design that we came up with. Obviously, what we've tried to do, when you have a narrow kitchen and you've got all these appliances that need to be 60 centimetres deep, what you've got to try to do is to think of a way that one side of the kitchen could actually be a little bit shallower back to front to make the kitchen feel more open, which means you've got to try to fit the appliances on two walls if possible, We didn't quite manage it in this design because obviously the dishwasher has snuck round the corner. But to achieve this look, the first thing we've done is position the sink not under the window, and we positioned it on that right hand wall. Now if you see our previous video on sinks here, we'll talk about don't always think you've got to have your sink under a window. You don't. As far as the rest of the kitchen is concerned, the two tall housings are still in the same place, the hob is in the same place, the washer dryer is in the same place. What we've effectively done is take the sink from the window wall and put it on that right hand wall. I couldn't get the dishwasher on either of those other walls, so we did still have to come round at that 60 centimetre depth just for the 45 centimetre of the dishwasher. But there, as you can see here, after that we've gone to a shallower depth run of base cupboards. We've rounded the worktop off at this corner here, and we've made the kitchen, as you walk in through that left hand door there, as you walk in, it feels wider, it feels bigger. We've managed to give you a feeling of space. Now straight away what some people are going to say to me is, oh well, you've lost cupboard space, because those cupboards are now shallower. And I can't argue with that, we have lost cupboard space. But let me show you some tricks as to how we've gained that cupboard space back. Okay, now here you see an elevation of the housing and hob run. And what I'd like to point out here is if you are fortunate enough to be dealing with a kitchen that is a custom-made designer end of the market, you can make slight variations to the size of your cupboards to help with cupboard space. Now if you look here, the height of the base cupboard shows it at 780 millimetres high, and it shows below it the plinth at 100 millimetres. Now typically everywhere you go with what I call off-the-shelf kitchens, the cupboards are 720 millimetres with a 150 millimetre plinth. So what we've actually done here is make the cupboards taller by using that plinth, which you don't actually need. As long as your toes fit underneath that plinth, there's absolutely no need for it, so it's wasted space. So we've made the cupboards taller. And if you look up there, the wall cupboards similarly are also 780, not your typical 720. Now I know it's only 60mm, but spread along all those wall cupboards, it does actually make quite a lot of difference. And also when you tend to go for the more designer-led kitchens, those wall cupboards, back to front, depth-wise, the carcass is likely to be 350 millimetres deep, not your typical 300. So you can sit a 12-inch dinner plate in your wall cupboards. These are a couple of reasons why it's always worth trying to consider going to, shall we say, the better end of the market, the more designer-led end of the market, because it can enable you to increase your cupboard space even though the footprint of the kitchen stays the same. So let's have a look initially at the Cad drawings of that design we've just talked through. Here you can see the long oven and hob run. We've got the fridge freezer at the far right hand side and then the double oven adjacent to it. The hob is just set away enough from the oven to allow for pan handles to overhang the actual hob. We've kept it quite tight to the oven because I wanted to make this space here bigger, which is the prep space between the sink and the hob. As I've talked in many of my previous videos, this is one of the most important parts of the worktop space within anybody's fitted kitchen. Also, to help this kitchen feel bigger, not just through design, we've introduced a handleless kitchen. Now again, when I've done a video on handleless kitchens and how they actually do give you an impression of space in a kitchen, they're streamlined kitchens. And I think that handleless look has helped to make this kitchen feel bigger. And the telescopic hood, rather than having a feature hood there, which disappears into a cupboard, has also helped this kitchen to feel bigger. Another visual trick is the worktop surface we've used. We've run it up the wall in a continuous turn. So basically what you get is that you've not got a tile there which is a different colour with grouting in it, which again can have the effect of making the kitchen feel small. That uniform look gives an impression more of space. We have actually put a heat resistant glass panel behind the hob there. We've done it in the same colour as the hob and the oven, so it's not bringing another colour in, but it does break up the look a little bit and I think it looks fantastic. Now as we move around, you'll now see on this particular shot here that the open shallow cupboards and what effect they've had. So we're looking down at the sink. We have run the wall cupboards all the way around, but because the sink's on that bottom wall, we've set the wall cupboards up where the sink bowl is. So you're not stood at your sink with your head banging your head on wall cupboards. We've also carried that glass splashback theme round from the hob wall onto the sink wall. Again, we've done that particular one with this Cad drawing in black to match the one that's behind the hob. But you can see quite clearly now the effect of opening that kitchen up with the shallow units. We've rounded the worktop after the dishwasher there. You've still got worktop space. It's still 40 centimetres deep, that worktop space. It's still usable space, but it's immediately opened up the kitchen. One thing to note again, if you're using somebody who can do specialist worktops for you, that worktop that's rounded there and comes from deep to shallow can actually be made in one piece with no joint. So again, it's always worthwhile considering trying to go for better quality, even if they're laminate worktops, and they can be made in one piece without joints. One final thing to point out on this particular Cad drawing, you'll notice that the sink draining board is overhanging to the left-hand side. Now in the old days, when Mr. and Mrs. used to stand next door to each other and one would wash the pots and the other one would dry, this obviously wouldn't work. But with the advent of dishwashers, generally people don't stand side by side after the evening meal washing and drying pots. So the draining board it's not necessary for it to be right in front of you. And in small kitchens where worktop space is vital, just pushing that draining board down into a corner aspect, and that bit of worktop space is not usually a piece of worktop space that you'd use to prep on anyway, it's wasted almost. It can really have beneficial effects because it maximises the more valuable worktop space elsewhere. And finally, this shot is just looking down the length of the kitchen again, and I think this really does show you as you walk in through the door, because that's where this Cad shot is taken from, as you're entering in through the door, that you've opened it up, and the space now between the oven, when the oven door drops down, and the cupboards on the opposite side has been increased, and it's much more now a two-person kitchen than a one-person kitchen. Now if we move on now to an actual photograph of the finished kitchen, a couple of things I'd like to point out here. One of the obvious difficulties of a small kitchen is actually getting a good angle for your photographs. Even with a wide angle lens, it's not very good, but this at least gives you a good idea as to what the finished result came out as. You're walking in through the kitchen here and straight away it's spacious. You feel that space between the oven and the shallow units. If you look where the dishwasher is, where the worktop curves, just imagine if that worktop had come all the way down at 60 centimetres deep. It would have really enclosed that entry into the kitchen. Another thing that the client differed from the Cad drawings that we presented to them, they decided that the Handleless Kitchen was great, but rather than picking out the Handleless Kitchen as a metal band, they've actually had the Handleless strip done in the same colour as the door. And I must admit, that actually again makes the kitchen feel a little bit bigger. And because they went for darker worktops than I was proposing, rather than putting black glass behind the hob and the sink, they picked out the glass in the same colour as the door, which I think actually again lifts the kitchen and has that effect of making it feel bigger. So there we have it. That's how we made this kitchen feel more spacious and yet give the client all the appliances they wanted, ample cupboard space and all the worktop space in the right place. You've got to admit it looks great and much better than a long, narrow, what we call galley kitchen. Okay, I hope you got some good ideas out of that. Obviously everybody's small kitchen will vary in sizes and door positions and window positions, and the tips that I've given you today might not actually work for every single one of you, but hopefully you'll get something out of the ideas I've shown you today. As always, if you've got any problems with your existing kitchen design that you're working on at the moment and you need some input, by all means, bang your questions in the comment box below. We will obviously get back to you as soon as we can. I'd like to thank you very much for watching and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.